here to talk about Uber's journey into Canadian cannabis, navigating regulations and partnerships. Please welcome today's moderator, the CRO of Neo Exchange Inc., Mr. Erik Sloane.
Kevin, whatever curtain you're hiding behind, thank you very much for the introduction, and our pleasure to be here. As Kevin mentioned, we're here today to chat about Uber's journey into Canadian cannabis, navigating regulations and partners. And I'm very pleased to be joined by two guests. To my left, Yoko Miyashita. She's the CEO of Leafly, and for the past 3 years now, she's been guiding that institution through their pathway in Canadian cannabis in partnership with Uber. Previously, SVP and General Counsel for Getty Images. She spent 14 years with that organization. So coming at this from both a legal and business background now as CEO of Leafly, thank you very much for joining me. And to her left, brilliant, thank you.
Thank you.
To her left, Ryan MacIsaac, legal counsel, and really focused ultimately, Ryan, on regulatory compliance and litigation for Uber. Prior to that, you've been with McCarthy Tétrault, one of our Canadian greats on the law firm side of the business. Again, you get a bit the sense here, focused on the legal end of the opportunity, marrying with business. So it's going to be a really fun 17 and a half minutes in front of us now. Yoko, I'd like to, for you briefly, maybe to just do a quick introduction on Leafly for our audience, make sure they know who you are. And then Ryan, I'll ask you to do the same on Uber.
Yeah, thank you for that intro. We are NASDAQ traded Leafly, LFLY. We are the informed way to shop for cannabis. And we've been leveraging information, data, and science to really help answer that question for consumers, what to try and buy. We connect millions of consumers every year with licensed retailers and brands across North America. Just been super excited to launch this partnership with Uber Eats over the last 6 months. Really for us, that's about opening up that top of funnel and really connecting more consumers with this amazing plan.
Amazing, thank you. Ryan, same to you.
And Uber operates software platforms that connect drivers and passengers and consumers and delivery people and restaurants and now cannabis merchants.
Amazing. Then with that, let's get right into the meat and potatoes here. We've got a short clock to work with, punchy answers, get as much information out to our audience as we can. I think it'd be great for this group, especially as investors, potential companies themselves in the room. Talk to us a little bit about how this partnership came together in the first place. Maybe Yoko, start with you.
You know, like with all great relationships, you meet, you date, you might go off on a little branch and you come back together. And those conversations started a couple of years ago. Jesse's in the room from Uber, and she's just been a fantastic partner. And we knew pretty early that there was something amazing here to mine and pursue. Between Uber's expertise in delivery, Leafly's expertise in cannabis, matching those around the shared values of trust and safety, we just knew there was something to keep pushing at. And as you've tracked this industry over the last couple of years, the ups and downs, the ins and outs, we were really just excited to both invest the time and really see the vision of what we could accomplish together to take this forward.
Yeah, totally. And for us, it was Leafly brings a lot of trust and experience and a network of SMB merchants to the table. I know Jesse's going to talk a little bit about that tomorrow morning at the brand stage. But if I can just kind of pause and just explain how the partnership works. It's Leafly has a platform that a whole bunch of merchants are plugged into, and Uber has the Uber Eats software app. And we built an API between them so consumers can use that super familiar ordering interface, send a request for cannabis, and it goes through the API, and the merchants see it on the Leafly app, so they don't have to be running two apps at the same time. And then the delivery is actually completed by the store's own, what you would call in America, W4 employees, not kind of the independent contractor delivery people that would do most of the meal deliveries on Uber Eats.
And I think that's one of the big headline misses, right? Uber delivering cannabis. No, licensed retailers are delivering cannabis. And so helping to unwind that and really explain that. And, we need to pause and just back up for a sec and just contemplate what that means for normalization of this plant. to have a name and brand like Uber associated with it. And for us to be able to do that together, where we've spent, over a decade really destigmatizing through education and information and being able to bring that to the forefront has been just so exciting.
Well, it's an interesting one. In my role as Chief Revenue Officer for NEO, partnerships are a big part of our existence. Finding the right partner, often a challenge. And for you, the partnership itself seems very complementary between the two of you. Both got strengths, capabilities, good overlap, and plug-in. And that's actually where I want to spend a little bit of time in the next couple minutes. Yoko, thinking about your benefit, the push, the drive, you've got a business, you've got credibility, you've got a platform. What does that partnership really mean for you? Not just the mechanism itself, but what's the strategy behind it?
I mean, for us, this is a win-win between consumer and supply. Both sides of the house win, and we're a multi-constituent platform. We serve consumers through their discovery and shopping journey. We serve retailers who are trying to reach those consumers as well as brands. So really being able to connect our very long tail aggregation of licensed suppliers with Uber's top of funnel and really being able to turn that into a coherent shopping experience. That's the excitement here. That's the opportunity. And for us, it's about making sure, right? Like, what is the biggest challenge in this space? It's winning consumers over, not just to try cannabis for the first time, but move them over from the unlicensed market. How are they shopping today? They're shopping on their mobile phones. We're accustomed to that convenience. This is how we shop as consumers. And we really just couldn't think of a better partner in terms of being able to achieve parity with that experience, because that's how you have to win. That's how you win from the illicit to the licensed channels.
I don't disagree, and I think we've all had Uber open maybe a half dozen times today, cabbing between spots on account of the rain. So familiar interface, go where your consumers are, easily accessible, makes a ton of sense. Now, Ryan, on the opposite side, massive company. You're in a bunch of different verticals. Tell us a bit more about the importance and significance of cannabis for Uber.
The importance of cannabis. I mean, it's just kind of a natural next extension for a platform where you can go anywhere and get anything delivered. Cannabis is legal in Canada, heavily regulated, but there's no real reason stopping us from going into that space, as with alcohol or baby food or flowers or any other types of merchants out there. What Leafly really brings to the table for us from a partnership perspective is that expertise in terms of validating licenses and building out menus, ensuring that descriptions of products are informative, accurate, and stay onside the promotional rules around cannabis.
Which in fact is what makes the panel and your respective businesses quite interesting. You've got that legal mind, risk, how do I deliver, and a business that you're both motivated to deliver upon, which I like. Partnerships are always fun, and sometimes at the end of it, you learn things through that dating period you love, you absolutely want to keep working on. Yoko, maybe from your end, tell us a bit about something that's worked really well and maybe something that you're working on still as it relates to the partnership with Uber.
I mean, so many opportunities and just so many things that we've already covered. I'll start with Ryan, the work he's done, the work Uber's done in Canada. And let's talk about, let's break this down a little bit in terms of the regulatory work. We've done a fair amount of our own work in Canada as we navigated federal legalization in 2018, understanding the province by province regulatory pieces, the Health Canada pieces, but then to marry that with the experience Uber brings to the table, and Ryan specifically in terms of the battles you've had to fight, not just in cannabis, but preceding that. And really, I would say we took a very comfortable side to back seat on the regulatory aspects of the partnership, because you look at who's got the strength of relationship, who can carry this conversation forward. We were really comfortable in that space. In turn, we'll marry that with, we know these retailers, we understand the regulatory landscape and the compliance pieces. Let's bring that together to make sure we're showing up with the best foot forward.
And Ryan, for you, like big company, we know you're all over the place in a bunch of cool spots. Where did you find it different, maybe working with someone like Yoko at Leafly?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think one of the kind of the unexpected challenges along the way, and this was not a Leafly challenge, this was like an other people challenge, was getting the payments lined up. And Uber processes a lot of money, and we use a lot of payment processors, and each payment processor has a sponsor bank, And everybody needs to agree that, okay, it's okay to be processing cannabis transactions, even though it's totally illegal. So that took a lot of internal work on our side. We had some superstars on our internal payments teams who just found a way to make it work. But it was something that going into it, blindsided me, which I think maybe a little naive. I'm just like a simple country Toronto lawyer, but very unexpected. And in terms of what's gone well, I think the regulatory piece has gone well. We took an approach of being proactive with the regulators because we knew Uber gets a lot of headlines for better or worse. And so we took the time to reach out. I worked closely with our policy team, crack policy team, very well connected in Canada, reached out to the regulators, set up meetings, present to them, explain what we're doing, take their feedback, incorporate it, kind of rebuild, tweak, go back to them and have that discussion. And very importantly, just make sure that they aren't blindsided by it, because when you blindside somebody with something that, they can lash out and react poorly, especially when, as Yoko mentioned, sometimes the headlines don't reflect, the nuances of the actual business.
And regrettably, you can't control headlines. It's a bit painful sometimes.
We try.
Kind of taking that step further into the conversation, you mentioned the approach using legal, regulatory mind, advanced warning. Canada is a different ecosystem to play with versus other spots in the world. Yoko, maybe a bit from your end, same kind of message, same kind of approach with the regulators. You're already a business and operating, but how do you manage your business versus the regulators in the same context?
Well, it's been really interesting, and we were chatting in our prep around the differences between Canadian and stateside engagement, and this approach about, early heads up, that consultative piece, very different than the battles we have to fight stateside. And so I do think in some respects, the Canadian, regulatory side, both provincial as well as Health Canada, ahead of the US. And you talk about this aspect of education for your payment processors, education for your regulators. I think Canada, for better or worse, just because of the timing, you have federal legalization for almost 5 years now. Wow, we're coming up on 5 years. And so a couple steps ahead on understanding, and really it's understanding the risks. What are you really worried about? How do you keep your consumer safe, and being able to speak to that?
Well, that's what I think actually is, and we were chatting a bit about it backstage, so powerful with the role you're in. You're bringing that legal mind, business savviness, here's my risk, and I'm able to 360 manage it and keep the regulators on side and happy for you both, which, good or bad headlines aside, always important to do. As an exchange, it is always about keeping the regulators informed about our own ambitions and missions and things we plan to change. Surprise is not the name of that game, so absolutely appreciate the position en route. Thinking about it in a similar vein, we often rely on our partners a lot for work, and what I saw from your partnership and kind of looked at it from a forward-looking perspective, you've got now cannabis data inside Uber. Ryan, maybe looking at you a little bit on data, insights, intelligence. Talk to us a little bit about Uber, if you can, and then Yoko, I'm coming back for you on this one too, because I'm keen to hear a bit about both of your views.
So Uber, we obviously have large amounts of data. We do, and this is informed by our past experience, but we do kind of take I would say, conservative approach when it comes to sharing or selling or kind of using data in certain ways. And so, we're not looking to monetize the data at this time. We certainly use it. We look at it. We use it to inform our business and our judgments. But we also kind of have to recognize the stewardship position that we have over users' data. And it's not just cannabis. It's where they're going and when and with whom.
I love it.
I think that is really one of the great benefits here of being able to work with an organization like Uber in terms of their data and their data expertise. And really, look, they've mastered local marketplaces. And for us, you asked about learnings in terms of what do you derive out of the partnership, and really thinking about how do we build our supply base? Where do we target? We've gone from 3 to 77 retailers in the 6 months since we've launched. And really bringing that lens of a non-endemic into the industry, I think this is all about, a little bit to our background conversation, the ability to bring that additional expertise to enrich and to really propel us forward. So that's been a really great foundational learning for us and how we've been able to work together. I still look at the data opportunity as the long and wide road ahead of us, simply because there's still a lot to surface. We really are the experts in discovery and being able to answer that consumer question. What happens when 1 + 1 happens between their expertise in delivery and consumer demand, between our expertise in cannabis selection and the science behind it? I'm really excited about where we can go together with that.
I couldn't disagree. You got data, informed information. It's a business leader's dream on navigating where do I want to go with the next stage of my business or product or evolution. Those are all incredibly powerful parts of the partnership. Again, very complementary. You're 6 months out now on the original press release, if I'm not mistaken. Obviously, things are moving along nicely. We wouldn't be sitting here on stage. What's something maybe that surprised you, Yoko, that's been really great about the relationship that you didn't see coming in? Because partnerships, as I mentioned at the beginning, always great. You think you know where you're going, but maybe something that kind of caught you by surprise to the positive.
Maybe the surprise that shouldn't have been a surprise is the challenge of translating the complexity of cannabis to the non-cannabis world. Whether that's a surprise, whether that's a challenge, it's a mountain to climb, we are always reminded of the complexity we navigate in this industry. And I'll be really curious to hear how Ryan reacts to that comment, simply because it's an ongoing challenge for us to solve. And I think, as I think about it as a cannabis player, really focused on opening up the world of cannabis to all consumers, that's a nut for us to crack.
I think it's a not unfamiliar feeling for me. For a long time, I've been having to explain in very just kind of step-by-step basic detail how the Uber platform works, whether it's to judges or to regulators. You can't assume that anybody knows anything going into it. And so just kind of starting with the basic building blocks is super helpful. In terms of surprises that came along the way, I would say there were at least two. One was when I started doing some diligence on Leafly and how their approach to compliance. I was pleasantly surprised at how, at the processes that you already had in place. And they were really good and really dialed in. Not that I wasn't expecting it, but it was a nice surprise. And I think the second one was just how welcoming the cannabis sector has been to Uber's entry into the space. You are all just a very welcoming group of people, society, culture, and that's been really wonderful to experience.
That is definitely a friendly crowd. And on that note, we've got only a handful of seconds remaining, but thinking about what you've shared with us today, from finding each other as a partnership in business to delivering on it, and clearly there's a lot of great things that I think can come from this for you both over the longer term. If I were to ask each of you, just for a parting thought, something we either didn't talk about, something you think our audience would find really interesting that maybe they don't know about either your respective organizations or what you're working on, what would that be in 30 seconds or less? Ryan, maybe start with you.
Look, this is not the end of the road for us. Stay tuned. A lot of it will depend on what happens at various levels of government across North America and frankly the world. But we're really looking forward to embracing the challenge of what comes next.
Love it. Yoko?
I echo that sentiment. And to me, this really is the key to unlocking that true TAM and potential of cannabis.
Tremendous. Well, thank you both, Yoko and Ryan, for joining me on stage for a presentation on both the partnership between Uber and Leafly. To our audience, if I can ask you for a small round of applause to thank our panelists for joining us today. Thank you. Thank you.
Certainly. Keep the applause going.